All right, we get it rolling. Krug Show on a Friday. Chase Sr. is in the house. We got a lot to get to, like we always do. No days off. Free agency just around the corner. Already a lot of rumors going around. We'll hit them all next. Off and running on the Krug Show on a Friday, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all Northern California is Pig and a Pickle. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. And they do run out, so get there early, get some brisket chili. Also, thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles, as well as Alomar Marina and Novato Chevrolet. We'll talk more about our sponsors before we get out of here. But thanks to all of our sponsors, and there's a link in the description for all of our sponsors. And if you want to support the show, the best way to do it is to support the sponsors. But we are off and running on a Friday. Chase Sr. is in the house, back by popular demand. The crowd's going crazy. Very happy to see you. Very happy to see you. Free agency is just around the corner. We titled the stream Mac Jones Asking Price because one of the stories out right now is that at the NFL Combine, a guy named Zach Blatt from The Athletic put it out there that several sources around the league have said the Niners are looking for a second-round pick plus more to move Mac Jones. Do you think they're going to find a trade partner? Do you think they're motivated to move him? Do you think that, there seems like there's two distinct camps. There's one camp that says, oh, no, they're going to keep him. They're absolutely not going to move him. And then the other camp is like, no. This guy's way too valuable. They have way too many needs. They're going to move him. It's just a matter of to whom, for what, and when. How do you see Mac Jones, and what do you think of this latest report from Zach Blatt?
I think it's one of those things where if the Niners get a really good offer for Mac Jones that allows them to get a couple of really good draft assets, let's call it a second-round pick and a third-round pick, I think the Niners would like a deal like that. But if they don't get a deal that they feel as though makes their team better or gives them an opportunity to really get a couple of really good draft assets to get some good young players in here under cost-controlled contracts for the next 4 or 5 years, what's the harm in having Mac Jones back for 2026? Brock Purdy has had a little bit of a troubled injury history so far in his NFL career. He's a smaller quarterback, and given how Mac Jones played well, how well he played last year in just resurrecting and revitalizing his career, clearly a scheme fit for Kyle Shanahan. We see the clips coming out from the Cabo clique of him hanging out with the likes of George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk. He seems to be a good vibes guy. I don't think there's anything wrong with Mac Jones being the backup for Brock Purdy next year because he helped to save the season in 2025, and quarterback security is always really important. So I wouldn't give Mac Jones away, who might be the best backup quarterback in the NFL, and I think that he could be a successful starter somewhere for nothing. I think the Niners are holding out hope that if they do trade him, it would be for what I think is a sweet spot. Second-round pick, third-round pick. And some people might think that's a little bit too much, but this is a guy who plays the most important position in football. And so I think it's justified to have that type of asking price.
All right, let's talk a little bit more. Let's drill down on this a little bit more. There's a bunch of teams that need a quarterback. To me, the team that I think makes the most sense when you look at all the factors it's the Dolphins. One, they're in the AFC, right? So you're trading him out of the conference. Two, he's from Florida. And he would probably be happy to go play in Miami for the Dolphins. Two, the Dolphins are kind of this team that kind of is at a crossroads, and they look like they're kind of in the midst of a rebuild, right? You got a brand new head coach in Jeff Hafley. Bobby Slowick is the OC, which also is another reason that I could see Mac fitting there in Miami. And then Miami's got a slew of weapons and a slew of players that it sounds like they're pretty good players, but they're also willing to move on from. Miami also has 3 third-round picks. They pick 11th in the first round. They pick 43 in round 2. The rumor here was, hey, the Niners want a second-round pick and a player for Mac Jones. But the Dolphins have 3 third-round picks. And I'll tell you, the guy that I would be very intrigued by if I could make this deal happen is I really think that Devin Achane is the perfect back for the Niners. I loved him at A&M. He's a home run hitter. He's got tremendous speed. You know, they have Jalen Wright. They have Ollie Gordon. They have Alexander Madison. They've got Donovan Edwards. They have other backs. They don't, you know, their quarterback depth chart is Quinn Ewers, Zach Wilson, Tua Tagovailoa, and Cam Miller. So Jones, I think, would definitely walk in there and start. Wilson's a free agent, by the way. What do you think of like Mac Jones to the Dolphins for Devin Achane and one or two of those 3 third-round picks that they have?
So we saw Devon Achane develop into one of the better, more electrifying speed running backs in the NFL under Mike McDaniel. Where did Mike McDaniel come from? He came from the Kyle Shanahan tree, and they've worked together in Washington. They worked together in Cleveland. They worked together in Atlanta. Obviously, in addition to that, San Francisco as well. And Mike McDaniel had never called plays before prior to getting that Dolphins head coaching job. And early on in his Dolphins stint, that offense was really exciting to watch. And when they drafted Devon Achane, a speed back in that system, combined with having the likes of Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, made that offense at times must watch. Now, when they played against really good competition, when they had to play in the cold, they always really struggled. I honestly think a big reason for that was Tua Tagovailoa. I just don't think he's that good of a quarterback. But
I don't either.
Achane showed that in that type of Kyle Shanahan scheme, he is one of the better backs in the NFL. I mean, this past year in 2025, he literally was one of the most productive backs in football. And you have to start thinking about what life is going to be like without Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is entering his age 30 season. He had more than 400 touches this past year. He led the NFL in touches in 2023, barely played in 2024. Heading into 2025, he had missed 10-plus games in 3 of the last 5 seasons and has a little bit of an injury problematic history, right? And so you have Christian McCaffrey for 2026. What's going to happen beyond that? I like what Jauan Jennings did, but he didn't get any carries until the divisional round. Isaac Guerendo is a player who at Wisconsin, at Louisville, with the Niners has never been able to stay healthy. So Achane becomes an interesting piece. What the holdup could be is that the Niners are paying big money to CMC right now. They, of course, gave a contract extension to Brock Purdy. George Kittle hurt. Fred Warner just got hurt. Nick Bosa is making a lot of money. He's hurt, but Devon Achane is looking for a contract extension soon as well, and he's contract extension eligible. So upon completing that deal, is Achane going to be comfortable playing on an expiring contract? Probably not. And would the Niners be comfortable in paying him big time money? But as an asset that you're getting back for Mac Jones, in addition to a 3rd round pick, I wouldn't hate it. Ideally, if you can't get a 2nd and a 3rd, can you pinpoint maybe 2 3rd-round picks? I think 2 3rd-round picks could be better than perhaps getting a Devon Achane and having to give him a contract extension. But that's the type of value that I would like for the Niners if they were to part ways with Mac.
Yeah, I just think Achane would be such a great fit. Heck, I'd throw in Guerendo. You want Guerendo and Mac Jones for Achane in a 3rd-round pick? I'd even throw in other guys too. You want Cowing, you want Watkins, you want, I mean, there's other guys on this team that I would be willing to move. But that's an interesting one. That one is interesting. Now, you mentioned that Achane, the Niners may not want Achane because of the cap situation. Well, what if their super expensive left tackle was also traded? Because there's an awful lot of speculation. Grant Cohn is speculating that the Niners may cut Trent Williams this weekend. The Niners love Trent Williams. He loves them. He's on the books for $38 million. They can't afford that. And there's been talk about trading him to Houston for a 2nd-round draft choice. Now, what do you think of this idea of moving off of Trent Williams? He lives in Houston. D'Amico's there in Houston, so there's a comfort level there. They're
He's
also
from Texarkana too.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about Houston for a second. They have made the determination that CJ Stroud is not the problem. That the problem is what's happening around CJ Stroud. So they brought in David Montgomery in the backfield, and they brought in Trent Brown to play right tackle. But you still have Arianti Ursary, who's a young left tackle, who's a rookie, a 2nd-round pick this last year. What about this for a deal? How about Trent Williams to the Texans for Ursary and a day 3 pick? Like, here, You take Trent Williams. We'll take Ursary, who, had kind of an up and down rookie year at left tackle, and we'll take some day 3 pick, a 5th round pick, a 6th round pick, just some nominal pick on day 3 plus Ursary. And the Texans get the ready-made left tackle that can protect the blind side of CJ Stroud, and they can go deluding themselves into thinking that Stroud's not the issue, that it's really just what's going on around him. What do you think? Would you make that trade? Would you trade Trent Williams for Ursary and a day 3 pick?
Well, I was talking about a potential Trent Williams trade earlier this week, and I know it sounds crazy to do something like that because he's the only elite player on an offensive line that is very average, and he makes the offensive line average. And if you were to lose Trent Williams right now, as currently constituted, the Niners would have one of the worst offensive lines in football. But he's going to be 38 years old. John Lynch even said that's making things a little bit tricky. And if you can trade Trent Williams away and you can get some really quality draft picks back, and you can maybe draft an offensive tackle who you really like in the 1st round or the 2nd round, that's a way to reset financially and get a lot younger on the offensive side of the ball. And what have we been talking about over the last couple of years? How the Niners need to find a Trent Williams replacement. I think a trade is the only thing that makes sense because of the dead money that would be at play if the Niners were to cut him. If they cut him pre-June 1, it's $34 million in dead money.
Wow.
And only $4.6 million in cap savings. So it literally makes no sense to cut Trent Williams. Why would you move on from an elite player? Now, you don't want him playing in 2026 under the cap number of nearly $39 million, but
can't do that.
Can you restructure it in a way, kind of like what the Houston Texans, Larry, did last night with Danielle Hunter, where they gave him like a $40 million extension for 1 year. And those players are similar because they're still premier players, still producing at a really high level, but they're older, so you don't want to tie them up to a long-term contract extension. But you talk about a potential trade, right? Ariante Ursary is a player who you and I liked in the pre-draft process last year. Played a lot at Minnesota, has a good body type. I think he'd be a good scheme fit. I like the body of work when he was a Golden Gopher. He's a young player who you can build with. But honestly, what I'd rather do is probably draft an offensive tackle at 27 overall. And you could look at Blake Miller out of Clemson. You could look at Ianachor out of Arizona State, who I really like, who had an excellent Senior Bowl and a great combine. I don't think that Caden Proctor will be available, but he primarily only played left tackle at Alabama. If he can keep his weight down, I think that he could be a really good player. I don't think the Utah offensive tackles are going to be available. Fano and Lemieux, Fano, I think he's going to go in the top 15. I think Muaga, the offensive tackle out of Miami, if I got that name right, I think he's going to go potentially.
I think it's it might be Maui Goa.
Maui Noah or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Monroe Freeling, the offensive tackle out of Georgia, is a left tackle who's very gifted, not a lot of experience, but he tested great at the NFL Combine. I think that he could go inside the top 15. So I think it's those prior names that I mentioned that you could get, or an Ariante Ursary, and then you're able to address another position of need, whether it be wide receiver, whether it be defensive tackle or defensive end. This is a draft that lacks star power and quarterbacks, but it is a draft where there's some really quality depth at certain positions. And I know you did a video on this yesterday or the day before, that range of 50 to 75. If you can get a pick there, I think that you can get some really quality players in that range.
Let's talk defensive end. There's a lot of talk this morning about Max Crosby. I've heard people connect the Niners to Max Crosby. The talk is the Raiders want 2 number ones. They want a Micah Parsons project, 2 number ones, and a Micah Parsons, that kind of a Parsons project. I was thinking Alan Parsons project. The Micah Parsons, package is what I'm looking for, which is 2 number ones and Kenny Clark. That's what they want for Crosby. I don't think the Niners have that, but there is a lot of talk about the Niners' interest in Crosby. There's talk about the Niners' interest in Trey Hendrickson. And then today, just moments ago, the Packers released Pro Bowl defensive end Rashawn Gary.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Chase? I mean, these guys all have their pros and cons. I kind of think if the price was right, I think Gary might be the guy. He's 280 plus pounds. He's a big edge setter on first and second down, and yet he's got the ability to bend the edge and get the quarterback on third down. He's not going to cost you as much money as Hendrickson. He's not going to cost you draft capital like Crosby, and yet he's a very special player. He had 7.5 sacks last year. What do you think of Rashawn Gary? He's always been thought to be like the super mega star who hasn't quite ever put it together. Could he put it together in San Francisco with Kasarik?
Yeah, so that news was more of like a cap type of maneuver for Green Bay, and Green Bay is going to try to find a trade partner for Rashawn Gary. But when that news comes out of like, hey, we're going to release him unless we can trade him, oftentimes there isn't a trade partner there because teams are like, okay, do we give up players and or draft picks, or do we just wait for that player to get released and then we can sign him to a contract that we think is a good contract for our team? I like Rashawn Gary as a player, and I think it's worth looking into a player like that. He's put together some really good years, especially the last two under Jeff Hafley. He kind of became underrated or under talked about after the acquisition of Micah Parsons, which is totally understandable. Has he ended up being like a star player that some people envision? I wouldn't say he's been a star player, but I think he's been a very good player. And I think his contract for this upcoming season is worth what, $19-20 million. If you're looking at a player like that in this robust, booming edge rusher market, and you can get like 8 to 10 sacks for around $19 million, it's really worth it. I mean, this is an era in which the premier pass rushers are making between $30 and $40 million, right? So if you can get a player like Rashawn Gary at 19-20, you can get a player like Jonathan Grenard, another trade piece with Minnesota, at $19 million, and Grenard is under contract for the next 2 years. I think those are the types of moves that make a lot of sense for San Francisco. You put that player opposite of Nick Bosa. You've got Michael Williams to play defensive end and defensive tackle, and a player like Jonathan Grenard fits the scheme. I mean, he had 12.5 sacks under D'Amico Ryans a couple of years ago. He's a really good edge setter in the run game. He's still in his late 20s, and he's under contract for the next 2 seasons. So a player like Crosby, I don't think makes as much sense for the Niners because he's going to be 29. He's ended the last 3 years hurt. The Niners as an organization have so many health issues, and his cap hit is more than $30 million. So would you rather just go a guy like Jonathan Grenard, a guy like Rashawn Gary, who's a fraction of that price? These players are younger than Max Crosby, have fewer injury concerns than Max Crosby, and you don't have to mortgage the farm like you would have to for a Max Crosby. I think that's kind of what the Niners' thinking is here at the defensive end spot, or it should be at least.
What do you think of Jalen Phillips? I mean, you saw him in Philly. It's funny. I was joking with somebody the other day. I'm like, when the Niners upset the Eagles, I walked down to the locker room, and as I'm walking out of the locker room, there's Jalen Phillips walking out of the stadium with his girl, and he's got just a big smile on his face, and he's laughing, and it's like, I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, man, if I was an Eagles fan, man, this would rub me wrong. It's like you just lost at home to the lowly Niners who rolled in, totally decimated. You're the defending Super Bowl champions, and you're walking out of the stadium with a big, S-eating grin on your face. It rubbed me wrong, but maybe that's just the way I am. What did you think of Phillips? And there's Crosby, there's Rashawn Gary, there's Trey Hendrickson, there's Arnold Ebiketie, and now you got a guy like Jalen Phillips. Where do you rank Phillips in the whole pecking order? Should the Niners? What'd you think of him in Philly? Should the Niners pounce? Are the Eagles going to try to retain him? What do you think of Phillips?
Yeah, from everything I was hearing at the NFL Combine, the Eagles really want to retain and keep Jalen Phillips. He's young. He's flourished under Vic Fangio now twice with the Miami Dolphins and with the Eagles. He helped to transform that Eagles front and that Eagles defense as a whole. Prior to acquiring Jalen Phillips, they were really good. Then they went from being really good to an elite defense, and they were a top 5 defensive unit right up there with the Houston Texans and the Seattle Seahawks. In 8 games with the Eagles, Larry, Jalen Phillips had 41 pressures. 41 pressures in 8 games.
Wow.
And I do think that some of the talent alongside him help to unlock them when you're playing alongside Moro Ajomo and Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. You're playing opposite of really good players and Nolan Smith once he came back healthy, and Jalen Hunt. Obviously, Jalen Carter was injured a little bit last year with those bilateral shoulder issues, but Jalen Phillips is a really good player. He's long, he's athletic. I think there are definitely concerns there because he medically retired in college, and then at the NFL level, he's torn his ACL, he's torn his Achilles, but he's not quite in that tier of Max Crosby or Trey Hendrickson, but I would say he's just underneath that elite tier. And I think that Trey Hendrickson is an affordable option for the Niners just because he's on the other side of 30 and he's coming off an injury-plagued season. And when you compare his value now to last year, this is why shitty organizations remain bad. I mean, Cincinnati could have traded Trey Hendrickson this time last year, and they could have gotten like a second-round pick and a third-round pick, maybe a late first, and now they're going to lose him for nothing. And so they kept him. They did nothing in 2025 as a team. But Jalen Phillips is excellent. I think he'll go in the range of like $20 to $25 million. It doesn't rub me the wrong way how he acted after that wild card loss. I mean, he called getting traded to the Eagles one of the best moments of his life. He had never played in a playoff game before, never even sniffed postseason play. And not only was he a great player for a contributing team, but he played some of the best football of his career. And so I think the Eagles are really going to try hard to bring back Jalen Phillips. They're kind of in the mix for Max Crosby. There was a report this morning that they could look to trade Jalen Carter.
I saw that. I was just going to ask you about that.
Kind of crazy. So you never know what
do you think of that?
You never know.
I mean, I know Jalen Carter's, runs a little hot, and he spit on a guy and cost his team, and he does some moronic stuff for sure.
Yeah,
but he is an awesome interior rusher, and those guys are so valuable. I think I would not trade Jalen Carter for Max Crosby, but is it possible that they're just really tired of Jalen Carter's act?
No, I don't think they're tired of his act. I actually think he's been pretty well behaved with the Eagles, and he's very well respected inside that organization. And this is a guy who played excellent last year, despite having bilateral shoulder issues. And then the year prior in 2024, he was an all-pro. The Eagles probably don't win a Super Bowl without Jalen Carter. He's the one who got to Matthew Stafford twice on that potential game-winning drive for the Rams, and he's one of the most disruptive players in football who's still under 25 years old. But I think from the Eagles standpoint, if they were to make a move like this, a couple of things, right? If you want an elite player, you have to give up either 2 first-round picks for Max Crosby. That's the asking price right now for the Raiders, or you give up an elite player. So you'd swap an elite player for an elite player without having to give up too much draft capital. Jalen Carter is contract extension eligible. So do they want to pay him $30+ million per year because that's the going rate when he's healthy? Or do they want to give Max Crosby around that same price tag for the acquiring team and the Raiders? If they lose Max Crosby, they know that they can sign Jalen Carter to a contract extension, and it's not like he could walk on them. They could sign him to a deal because he's extension eligible. I also think the Eagles have a couple of defensive tackles who they really like. I think they love Jordan Davis on the field and in the locker room. He's emerged as a great leader for that team. They also really like Moro Ajomo. And one of my predictions going into 2025 was that Moro Ajomo was going to have a better year in 2025 than Milton Williams had in 2024. And Milton Williams is the second highest paid defensive tackle in football behind Chris Jones. But I think when the Eagles look at Davis and Ajomo, if they both sign contract extensions now, they could get both of those players between 15 and 20 million, whereas Jalen Carter could be in the market for 30+. And the Eagles, I think that they could build around Ajomo and Carter. And the Eagles as a team, they might be worried about some of the character stuff that has surfaced from time to time and at the University of Georgia, and maybe the bilateral shoulder issues. And if you were to, on the chart of value, look at what position is more important, I think it's pass rusher, defensive end as compared to defensive tackle. But that would be hard to give a player like that away. There's that saying, Larry, you want quarterbacks who come from double parent households, but you want defensive linemen who didn't grow up with with a father because you want those guys to be violent and dogs. I think you want defensive linemen who have that type of makeup because they play a position in which they got to pin their ears back and be an assassin, and they want to hit the quarterback and destroy the offensive lineman in front of them. And I think it's important to have dogs as culture and tone setters along that defensive line, and Jalen Carter is certainly that.
I'll tell you, man, people are going to not like this next comment, but I'll tell you, I would absolutely make this call if I were the Niners. If I thought that and it makes sense the Eagles would trade Jalen Carter for Max Crosby if you look at their depth chart. I mean, Jalen Phillips, free agent. Azeez Ojulari, free agent. Brandon Graham, free agent. Ogbo Oronquo, free agent. They're all free agents. They got 4 defensive ends that are free agents. The only defensive end they really have on the roster is
Jalen Hunt, Nolan Smith are the only defensive ends on the roster who are under contract.
I forgot about him, Jalen Hunt. But look what they have inside. So you got Jordan Davis, you got Jalen Carter, but then I'm a huge fan of Ty Robinson from Nebraska. They took him in the 4th round. I know he didn't necessarily play well the rookie year, but give it time. They also have Byron Young, the former Bama player who was with the Raiders, and they may like him a little bit. So they've got some depth inside.
Byron Young played pretty well last year.
Yeah, they got some depth inside. They don't have a lot of depth off the edge. If I were the Niners, why not jump the line and say, hey, you're going to trade Jalen Carter and a pick or something for Max Crosby? How about Bosa? Would you trade Jalen Carter and a pick for Bosa?
Jalen Carter and a pick for Bosa. See, him coming off the torn ACL, knowing that he tore his ACL in 2020 and had a partially torn ACL in high school worries me a little bit. I mean, I think over time, Nick Bosa has become a little bit underrated. Like, the numbers that he's put up and the impact that he's had.
He's really good against the run.
He is excellent. And I think he's underrated against the run. Not great, but underrated. He's not just a one-trick pony, though. He's not just a pass rusher. I don't know if I would do that. If I was the Niners, though, and you can sign a Trey Hendrickson and you can get Jalen Carter at defensive tackle with Alfred Collins, CJ West, and then you draft the defensive end, or you make another ancillary move or something like that, man, that would be a fascinating one. Because I think the Niners need more like dogs and mean guys on their team. I think they've got too many nice guys. I think they need some guys who put fear into the opposition. That's one of the reasons why I'd love for them to bring in CJ Gardner-Johnson. I know he's a little bit psycho, but I love how he's psycho. And I think it's a good thing that he's psycho.
I agree. We're in lockstep on that one. 49ers need to add at least 5 or 6 fearsome defenders, and CJ Gardner-Johnson could be one of those guys. And heck, the big defensive tackle wouldn't hurt either. Offensive line. It's funny. I'm watching Lombardi do his thing earlier today, and he just keeps talking up this Niner offensive line. And I get it. Trent's pretty highly rated, and McKivitz is pretty highly rated, but I don't buy a lot of these analytics on Brendel. My eyes tell me he stinks, and I'm not a big fan of left guard. It sounds like Matt Barrows is saying the Niners are going to let Spencer Burford walk in free agency, but they want to retain Ben Bartch. I've also heard the name Dylan Parham, the former Raider, and Isaac Sumalo, whose I guess sister might be on the Niners scouting staff, as interior offensive line options.
Joel Bitonio, if he doesn't retire, is a 7-time Pro Bowler who got let go by the Browns, is another intriguing option there.
Shanahan, I think, was with the Browns when they drafted him out of Nevada way, way, way back when, and he's a good player still at this point. Where are you on the Niners offensive line, and where do you think they are on their offensive line? And we mentioned Trent. I mean, if you're going to trade Trent, obviously you're going to, you're trading the best player on your line. Now the line goes way downhill. But I'm just not a fan of Brendel, and I'm not a fan of what they've done at left guard. And I think Pooney was a little underwhelming, and McKivitz is just decent, and Trent's 38. I don't understand people who have enthusiasm for this line. This line at best is an eroding line with one great player on it who's 38. I don't understand the pushback when people are like, man, this line stinks and needs to be upgraded. How about just say, yeah, instead of digging for some obscure stat that proves that the line that we see is struggling isn't struggling?
Yeah, so a couple things here. I appreciate David Lombardi coming up to me in San Francisco, and I was there for Super Bowl week, shaking my hand, introducing himself. It was a good interaction.
He's not a bad guy. He's a good guy.
No, good guy. I have a lot of respect for what he's built on his YouTube channel. It's very aesthetically pleasing. I think he does a great job. Mike Ortaza helps him out. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that name right. And I think that they have paired up to do some tremendous work. And David's analysis is really good from time to time. But we know that he always kind of errs on the side of being pro Niners, and he rarely criticizes San Francisco. And sometimes everything that they do, he looks at it through a positive lens. I don't think that's a fair way to approach covering a team, especially an organization that hasn't won a Super Bowl since 1994. So that's one thing. All right. The other thing is that when I was at the NFL Combine, and I went up to a bunch of people around the NFL who are either involved in the league or cover the league from a national perspective.
The Baldies of the world.
What they need to do in order to improve their team and catch the Seattle Seahawks, whether it be Brett Coleman, who has a massive YouTube following, John Middlecoff, a former scout. A lot of great interactions with these people. Everybody said the 49ers need to improve their offensive line. And then I saw Jennifer Lee Chan, who I also sat down with, and that video is up on my channel. She does a tremendous job. She was speaking with John Lynch, and she asked him, do you think your offensive line is good, or what do you think about the outside perception that it's not good? And Lynch said, we love our offensive line. That's when I got to hit pause. When you turn on the tape, your eyes do not lie to you. When you watch the Niners against the Seahawks in Week 18 and in the divisional round, they got their asses kicked up front, especially along the interior. When you think about the Niners' shortcomings in a lot of these games over the last couple of years, 2021 NFC Championship game against the Rams, 2022 NFC Championship game against the Eagles, 2023 Super Bowl against the Chiefs, where have they come up short? Along the offensive line. Some of this is scheme and philosophy from Kyle Shanahan. A lot of it is personnel. Jake Brendel is not good enough. Spencer Burford is not good enough. Dominic Pooney had a down year 2 compared to what he looked like as a rookie. Colton McKivitz is a good right tackle. He's not a great right tackle. And the biggest litmus test with him is when he goes up against some of the top pass rushers in the game, whether it be TJ Watt in the opener in 2023 when he was getting dusted, whether it be Danielle Hunter or Will Anderson last year against Houston. He cannot hold up against some of the top pass rushers in the game. And I know some people might say, Chase, you're comparing the Niners to the Seahawks. That is the Super Bowl champion. You look at a team like the Philadelphia Eagles who won the Super Bowl the year prior. They had a great offensive line. What did they also do? They were dominant with their defensive line. And so the Niners need to improve their offensive line, and they need to change their philosophy. And until they do, and until they start to value it more, I don't think they're going to be able to win a Super Bowl. And don't hit me with Kyle Shanahan saying that Jake Brendel is one of the best centers in the NFL. He might be cerebral. He might be very intelligent pre-snap. Some of the things that he does in the run game, he's a good run blocker, grades out well there. It's impressive. But as a pass protector, he is not strong enough with his anchor, with his lower frame. And when he goes up against physical defensive tackles, he gets pushed into the lap of Brock Purdy. In hindsight, it's kind of a joke, Larry, that the Niners entered the year with Ben Bartch as their opening day starter at left guard. He is not good enough. So this offseason, I think the Niners need to upgrade at center and left guard, whether you do that in free agency, whether you do that in the draft. You got to get better along the offensive line, because anytime they've gone up against upper echelon top tier defenses, they have been exposed with their defensive line. And the philosophy doesn't make sense to me when you just sign your quarterback to a contract extension. Don't you want to protect him and keep him on his feet? Instead, he's running for his life.
Build the fortress around him. I'd clean the thing out. I'd keep Pooney and McKivitz, and I would clean out Brendel and Burford and Trent. And I know Trent's a great player, but I would trade him and get down the road with a younger player and start getting that thing upgraded. I want to share the screen on this one. This is an interesting concept. Somebody threw this out, 49er and NFL News 24/7. I'm not saying this is a report. This is more of just an opinion, but it's an interesting one. Brian Thomas is out there, and there's a lot of talk the Jaguars are going to move Brian Thomas. And I saw a list of teams that were interested. The Niners weren't on that list. I hope that's just erroneous. I hope they are on this list. But here's the rumored trade, or here's the proposed deal in this tweet. The Niners get Brian Thomas Jr., the Jaguars get Renardo Green, and the Niners' second-round pick. Would you make this trade? I mean, I like Renardo Green, but it's pretty clear that he's on his way out. But I love Brian Thomas, and I think Brian Thomas in San Francisco would emerge as the 49ers' best offensive weapon. And I think it would become the Brian Thomas show. I think he's got huge talent, major upside. I think if you put him with a better quarterback and a better offense, he's going to be one of the NFL's better receivers.
I would make that move right now. And there are some concerns here. If you look at what Brian Thomas did in year 1 compared to year 2, it was a little bit puzzling. His rookie year, he emerged as legitimately one of the best wide receivers in football. And then year 2, after he had a great opening season to start his NFL career, he was unhappy with the Jags, yet the Jags were winning. Trevor Lawrence played better. The coaching situation with Liam Cohen had improved. The defense was really good. Jacksonville went on the road and they kicked the Broncos' ass late in the year. So Jacksonville was a really good team. And I think looking ahead, they are an intriguing team to monitor in the AFC. But Brian Thomas in year 2 didn't have the same production. He was unhappy. He was dropping a lot of passes. He was very inconsistent. But he's got everything that you look for in a franchise wide receiver. He's big. He runs really well. And when he's engaged, he has really good hands. So that is a number 1 wide receiver who has a diverse route tree. He can get past the secondary, rip the top off of the defense. He can get vertical. He can pick up yards after the catch. He's a goal line to goal line threat. He's a factor in the red zone. And I'm just not sure if Renardo Green is a fit for this Niners defense. I think he's more of like a press man corner, but the Niners under Kyle Shanahan since 2017 have been one of the more zone heavy coverage defenses in the National Football League. So we know that Jacksonville likes to play a very aggressive type of defense. Renardo Green went to Florida State. That would bring him back to where he played his college ball. It would give him a change of scenery, and it would give the Niners something that they desperately need. A young wide receiver who's dynamic, fast, and explosive, who also offers really good size. And if Brian Thomas would be unhappy in a Kyle Shanahan offense, what would make him happy? So that is a move that I would definitely think about doing.
The other note that I saw this morning that I thought is kind of interesting, and this is a note from Dan Graziano. Here it is. We'll share the screen on this one. Coach Yak had this one up. Dan Graziano of ESPN is predicting the 49ers will sign Romeo Doubs, 3 years, $49 million, including $30 million guaranteed. I'm a Doubs fan. This does seem a little high, though. 3 years at almost $50 million for Doubs. Now, I like Doubs. The concussions would concern me. I do think that Doubs would give you an ability to say goodbye to Jennings, because Doubs does what Jennings does. I mean, they're both continuity pieces. They catch big balls on third down and in the end zone. They move the chains. They score touchdowns. I think you put Doubs on the 49ers with a better quarterback, more accurate quarterback, and he gets, let's say 15 to 20 more targets over the course of the year. I think he can be a 90 ball receiver in this 49er offense. I like Doubs in that option the most of the free agent options, more than Alec Pierce, more than some of the other guys out there. How do you feel about wide receiver? Where do you want to see the Niners? It sounds like, from what I've been reading, Chase, they are knocking on every door. They're talking trades. They're talking signings. They're talking draft picks. Tony Pauline says Chris Bell from Louisville may go to them in the first round. I can't necessarily see that, but I
coming off a torn ACL, that scares me. But he's a dog.
He's a dog, and I like him as in the second round. I don't know if I like him in the first round, but there was a report they liked Garendo in the third round, and they took him in the fourth round. So these things have a tendency to work themselves out. What do you think of Doubs and that option for the Niners in free agency? Do you like him, or is there another receiver that you prefer?
Yeah, so yesterday live, I put together my perfect free agency plan for the Niners, and step number one at wide receiver, target Alec Pierce. I really like Alec Pierce because he's tall, big-bodied, long. He's led the NFL in yards per catch the last 2 years. Him and Deshaun Jackson are the only players in NFL history to average and lead the league in yards per catch 2 different times while averaging more than 20 yards per catch. And Alec Pierce is a dynamic threat who's put up really good numbers with bad quarterback play. I think in this offense, he could really eat. He runs well. He can go up and get it. He can beat man and press man. He's a really good player. The issue with this wide receiver market is Alec Pierce is the best wide receiver available. Romeo Doubs is probably the second best wide out. And because there are some teams who are very wide receiver needy, I think Alec Pierce probably gets a little bit more than what he should. And that could inflate the price for Romeo Doubs as well. But I love Doubs as a player. You know that he would fit in this offense because he's flourished under Matt LaFleur. At his age, I think the best football is ahead of him. The numbers don't pop off the screen because he's been around some really good players. You know, he's played alongside Christian Watson and Tucker Kraft. The Packers as a team have run the ball a lot with a player like Josh Jacobs. So I think Romeo Doubs isn't necessarily like a high-end number one, but I don't think that you need a number one to win a Super Bowl. I think that you can win a Super Bowl with 2 really good twos and a sound running game, good offensive line, and a good defense. So Doubs is a player who is 6'2", 200 pounds. He runs in the high 4.4, so he's faster than Jauan Jennings, but does what Jennings does, coming through in the red zone and on third downs. He's very slippery in the open field. He can make plays downfield as well. I think that he can really track it. And at that contract, I know you said you didn't like it. I actually wouldn't hate it a little bit. I know he's been rocking the Guardian cap, so the concussion issues are a little bit of a problem, but he's a complete wide receiver who, I've said this on my show, I think his best football is ahead of him. And I hope that the Niners are doing their due diligence at the wide receiver spot, whether it be via trade, draft, or free agency. It's a deep draft class. Was talking with Daniel Jeremiah. It's a draft class that has a lot of different flavors at the wide receiver spot. Possession guys, jump ball guys, guys who can pick up yak, guys who are X, Z in the slot, like a lot of different receivers there. But point being, the Niners need to improve their wide receiver room.
No doubt. Is AJ Brown going to get dealt? And if so, what's that price tag?
If DJ Moore is going for a 2, AJ Brown has to go for a 1, right? So I think AJ Brown is worlds better than DJ Moore. I don't think that DJ Moore is the number 1 wide receiver at this juncture of his career. I think that he can eat alongside Josh Allen, but he's a shorter outside wide receiver, whereas AJ Brown is a complete wide receiver. And there are a lot of casuals who will say, I don't want that malcontent on my team. There's so much drama. AJ Brown inside that building is beloved. That's what I've heard. That's what everybody has heard. People have mad respect for AJ Brown, the player who he is and the person who he is inside the building. So the perception outside of the building is a lot different than what the perception of him is inside the building. I kind of lean toward him getting traded. I think it would almost be awkward for him to come back for the team in 2026 with how hot all of the trade buzz has been. But with Max Crosby and AJ Brown, I think it has to happen before free agency starts on Monday.
I think AJ Brown's going to be in New England. I don't know. I mean,
New England or Baltimore are the 2 teams.
I just think New England did not get rid of Diggs without knowing that they were going to get Brown.
That would make sense.
I can't imagine that they did that. I'll tell you one thing that's not going to make Niner fans happy. And maybe, I'm a believer that you should worry about yourself and don't worry about your neighbor, right? Don't worry about what teams are doing. Now, keep an eye on your teams in your division. I'm not saying that you don't try to match up. You do. But your first, second, third, fourth, and fifth goal have to be about your team, and everything else should just be kind of secondary. ESPN's analyst Aaron Schatz identified ideal landing spots for several NFL free agents. Did you see where he's got Jauan Jennings going?
Where does he have Jennings going?
The Seahawks.
Oh no.
Yes, he says his physical style of play would be, they're gonna say goodbye to Rashid Shaheed.
Yep.
They've got Brian Fleury as the OC. He's familiar with Jennings from being in San Francisco. John Schneider always seems like he gives an extra look at whoever the Niners cut. He knows that Jennings means a lot to the Niners. They have nothing but cap room in Seattle. This would stick it to the Niners It would also give them another just absolute winning player. What do you think of Jennings to Seattle? Let me ask you this. What do you think the Niner fan reaction would be to it?
Oh, outrage.
Yeah.
Outrage. I mean,
like, what the
of,
heck is going on here? I think people are expecting, if he goes to like the Raiders for some big payday, people will be like, you know what? He needed to get paid. But if he goes, and I brought this up about a month ago, I said, if he winds up going to another team for less money, that's a better Super Bowl contender than the Niners, that makes the Niners look really bad.
Yeah. I also think it would come down to the price, right? Like, let's say he signed with Seattle for $13-14 million. I think that's a very affordable and fair price to bring Jauan Jennings back to the Niners. Now, if he goes to Seattle for $20 million per year, let him walk, right? He's going to be 29 next year. The Niners need to get faster and younger as an offense. He is a slower player, and he's going to be 29. He's obviously maxed out his physical capabilities, but man, he fits the identity of Mike McDonald, John Schneider in Seattle as a tough, rugged football player who will snatch your chain and laugh about it and drive you crazy, a willing blocker and a team player. I think Niner fans would be bent out of shape about that. I mean, he's come through in so many big spots. He's earned the nickname Third and Jauan for a reason. You think about what he's done with the touchdown throw to Christian McCaffrey in the wild card game against the Eagles, the touchdown throw that he made to Christian McCaffrey in the Super Bowl, the touchdown that he caught in the Super Bowl against Kansas City in that same game. He has been incredible for the Niners, and what a great player developmental story. I mean, drafted in the 7th round, didn't make the 53 as a rookie, and it's gotten better every year. But I think there's a walkaway price for the Niners, and I'd be interested to see, and will be interested to see what that walking away price is.
Yeah, no, it's that one's going to be tough. I think that's going to be a tough moment. If he bolts for the Raiders or some big payday on some shitty team, people will be like, you know what? He needed to get paid. But if he winds up going to a contender and takes less money to do it, man, that's going to make the Niners look bad. Couple last thoughts, and then we'll jet. There was a report that from David Bonilla on Niners Web Zone that maybe, he's talking about reunions, and they've got a reunion between Caden Ellis and Raheem Morris in San Francisco. He played for Morris in Atlanta. Caden Ellis is a kind of a quietly very productive player. He's got 20.5 career sacks, all in the last 5 seasons, 12.5 over the last 3 years. This year, he had an 84.6 pass rush grade from PFF, higher than any Niner defender, with more than 5 pass rush attempts. Is Luther Ellis's son, one of his sons? He's got a bunch of sons, actually. I wouldn't mind Jonah Ellis, the Broncos edge rusher.
Christian Ellis was a starter for the Patriots at linebacker. I mean,
right. Caden is a good player. I mean, this guy's the ultimate sire.
Dad played in the league. 3 sons playing in the league right now.
That's amazing. It's like Rick Barry or something.
Yeah,
I mean, but what do you think? Is Caden Ellis? Do you see him as somebody who's going to follow Raheem Morris to the Niners? They're saying his market value is about $9 million annually. They're saying 3 years, $26.9 million in free agency. He's entering his 8th NFL season. Do you think the Niners go after him?
Yeah, I think the big question is what's going on with Nick Martin. Do the Niners think that he is an NFL player? What's going on with the concussion issues? Because I do think that with his playing style, like a bat out of hell, like it does fit that Fred Warner, Drake Greenlaw type of mentality at the linebacker spot. I thought this is pretty notable that Jeff Ulbrich, who the Niners had interest in hiring as their defensive coordinator prior to settling for Nick Sorensen, is now the DC with Atlanta. He turned around that defense overnight in 2025 under Raheem Morris. And he was asked something along the lines of, what would this defense look like without Ellis? And he said, it's hard to function without a player like Ellis. So him alongside Fred Warner, that would be a really good linebacking core. I think the Niners have clearly missed having a great second level of that defense, not having Dre Greenlaw, not having a player like Azeez Al-Shire. The linebacker play outside of Warner has been a little bit suspect over the last 2 years because of injuries and players who they've lost. So I would pay $9 million for a player like Ellis, especially with what he did under Raheem Morris last year with Atlanta, where he had a career season.
Last thought, and then we'll hit some supers and bolt. I'm sharing the screen on a Coach Yak tweet. He's talking about a guy that I love. This kid, Miles Rouser, plays at ASU. He's a safety. And this is your this is your CJ Gardner Johnson. I mean, this guy absolutely wants to destroy people. Supposedly he met with the Niners, the Seahawks, the Ravens, the Jets. These are all kinds of teams that it seems like look for these nasty players sometimes. The Niners and the Chiefs met with his defensive coordinator at ASU to talk about him as well. His name's Miles Rouser. He's going to be a 7th round pick, probably maybe a 6th or 7th round pick. But I got this guy listed as the safety that I want on day 3, who's just going to absolutely knock your block off. Is there a day 3 player? You went to the combine, so you have a pretty good feel for this probably. Is there a day 3 player or prospect in this upcoming draft that you're like, you know what? Nobody's talking about this guy, but I know this guy's a player and I love him, whether it's for the Niners, the Eagles, or any other team. Is there a day 3 player based on your combine, your trip to Indy, that you're like, you know what? If you can wind up with an extra day 3 pick, I would say if you can wind up with an extra day 3 pick, draft this guy, Miles Rouser, in the 7th round, because he will crush you. And he's just the kind of violent safety that I think they need. Is there anybody that jumped out to you?
Yeah, the USC safety Bishop Fitzgerald, I think, is a really interesting name. He had excellent ball production last year at USC, and his coverage grade was over 90. And I talked about this on the show. I think the Niners need to pinpoint a coverage safety for this team. You think about Jair Brown and Malik Mustafa. Mustafa is obviously much better than Jair Brown, but they're both better safeties downhill and around the line of scrimmage, kind of like Talanoa Hufanga, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the Niners miss that center field, ball hawking, rangy type of safety who can make plays in the pass game. And Bishop Fitzgerald out of USC is a player who played really well under DeAnton Lim, who I would really like day 3.
That's an interesting one. I'll have to check him out. All right. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Sleeper as well for sponsoring the Krug Show. If you're new to Sleeper, if you're already on Sleeper for fantasy, it's right there. They've got their brand new team picks thing. It's there waiting for you. If you're new to Sleeper, Sleeper continues to be an all-in-one platform following your teams and staying connected to the action. Also, thanks to Alomar Marina, our sponsor for our spring training trip, voted the best lunch spot in Sacramento. You can float on the Sacramento River while you dine. AlomarMarina.net on the web. They're at 5999 Garden Highway. And also thanks to Novato Chevrolet. Go see my man David Corral. He will make you a screaming deal. You're going to love it. He'll take care of you. Tell him that Krug sent you. Call David Corral at Novato Chevrolet. And you've dropped my name. He will absolutely take care of you. Thanks to David Corral from Novato Chevrolet. Also, thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. And last but certainly not least, our good friends at Habbas Law. And Habbas Law brings us our supers, so we will put it on the screen there. 1-800-INJURED. They got a whole new commercial deal that they just did with Macklin Celebrini of the Sharks. Check it out. He teams up with Omar and Tarek Habbas of Habbas Law in a new series of TV commercials. 1-800-INJURED. They will fight to make it right. Thanks to Habbas Law for being a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. All right, let's hit our 5 supers and we'll bolt for the door. We got this one, brand new member. Thank you, John Thomas. Always nice to have a brand new member there. Michael's in the house, and he drops this one. Would love it if the Niners could flip Mac Jones for a 2nd-round pick to take a linebacker like Jacob Rodriguez. Yeah, he's terrific.
He's a dog.
Texas. Oh, God, what a combine he had.
Yep.
Feels like he'll be a culture setter for the coming years. I agree.
What better player to learn from than Fred Warner if you're Jacob Rodriguez?
Seriously, Jacob Rodriguez. I mean, he's got that goofball mustache, but man, you know what? This guy's a hell of a player. I mean, he really.
Bryce Betcher is another like day 2, day 3 guy who I really like out of Oregon.
Did you talk? You talked to him too, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, great conversation. Drafted by the Houston Astros as a center fielder. So
right.
Yeah, athleticism is there. He's kind of a read and react player. He would be a good fit for the Niners too.
Yeah, that's a good one. Boxing fan ×4. Draft Monroe Freeling and Keelan Rutledge and sign Linderbaum. I love that kid.
You want to fix your offensive line overnight. That's how you do it.
Whew. Seriously, 3 guys right there. That'd be nice. The guy that I kind of like, Micah Morris had the best 10-yard split, and he's like 350 pounds, the Georgia guard. That the Niners love the 10-yard split.
Love that.
I think Micah Morris could be for them in day 3. Tyler says Baltimore intriguing for AJ. Lamar is tweeting like he knows something.
He tweeted out a gif of like boom. So we'll see. They're interested in Crosby too, according to reports. So it could be that.
Who are they interested in there?
Baltimore's interested in Crosby and AJ Brown.
Oh, AJ Brown. Oh, yeah. No, I did see Baltimore tied to AJ Brown. We have this one from Blood Moon. Taylor Decker is not retiring, 32 and released. He's not retiring? I thought he was retiring. That he can play. There's no question he can play. I mean, I'd bring him in if he's literally not going to retire. All right, Chase, that's good. That's going to do it for us. What do you got cooking this weekend? Any big plans out in the Dallas area? What does your off-season weekend to-do list include?
No off season. A lot of draft talk, a lot of free agency talk. I'm on pins and needles to see if the Niners make a trade, if the Eagles make a trade, if there's some big trade across the NFL.
If the Niners traded Nick Bosa for Jalen Carter, your timeline would explode. You couldn't make enough videos.
I would probably just piss and shit myself and just not know what to do.
Bosa for Jalen Carter.
Yeah, but I'll be live all next week on the 49ers Report. So this is one of the more exciting weeks of the year coming up, I think. Just given what can happen with the Niners, what can happen across the NFL. So I'm going to be kind of like tied to my phone waiting to see if any breaking news happens, because there's already been 4 trades and there's been so many moves that have happened. Like Rashawn Gary might get released now, as we talked about earlier. So you can't sleep, man. You can't sleep. I'll have an exciting announcement in the next couple of days with some of the future content that I'll be doing. So be on the lookout.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, Chase is outstanding. Check out Chat Sports. They do an amazing job. For Chase, I'm Larry. Have a great rest of your Friday. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get